Hey everyone, welcome to another Dave's Real Life Story. And last month I had done 5 real life stories in 1 month for the 4th of July, where I almost burnt down the neighborhood, and also what happened to me at 15 being kicked out of the house. So I had to do 4 of those in a row instead of doing one massive long video. So I hope all of you enjoyed those real life stories. And this month I'm going to be talking about my son, which I love very much. And it sucks because now that I'm in El Paso, I'm literally 2,900 miles away from him in Florida. And so I've only seen him literally once in almost 4 years. And that is the most that I've ever gone by far, with the frequency of, how often I could see him. I mean, I used to see him all the time in Florida. I mean, he lived with me for, 3 years. And, with him growing up, his mother and I at about 3, we weren't together anymore. So, I would go and get him as often as I could. And, so yeah, I got a couple of cool little stories for you about my son when he was growing up. And the theme for this is going to be SeaWorld. But before that, I don't know if you've ever heard of Brewster's, but it's an ice cream place that has like hot dogs and stuff. It's sort of like a little outdoor Dairy Queenish type of place. Well, they had one open up in the town where I'm from, in Titusville, and my son would always want to go there. So he would always call me when I was at work or something, and he would always ask if I would come and pick him up on my way home because he wanted Purple Dinosaur. And Purple Dinosaur was it was like a vanilla ice cream with a purple food coloring in it. So it was like a purple vanilla ice cream. And he loved this Purple Dinosaur. And then they would always give you, it came in a cup, and then they would always give you a dinosaur cookie too, like a T-Rex cookie. So he would always love his Purple Dinosaur. And a lot of times before we would go to SeaWorld, we would always stop by Brewster's before we, got on 50 and went over to Orlando. So he would always love his Purple Dinosaur. And then they stopped doing the Purple Dinosaur, and he was just devastated. But he was older by this point. So I mean, when I first started taking him to Brewster's, he was probably about 4 or 5 years old. And yeah, he loved that Purple Dinosaur, and it was actually pretty good ice cream. But I always got the key lime pie because it had like the sugar graham crust in it and stuff. It was really good. All that stuff was homemade. So SeaWorld, my ex would always take him to Disney World. I'm not a Disney World fan at all. Simply because, after you go about 20 times, it's just not cool anymore. I mean, it's cool, but, it's just not for me. So I would take my son to SeaWorld because I love sciences, I love marine biology, I love animals and stuff. So we would go to SeaWorld. So like his ex would take him to Disney World 12 times a week, and then, a couple times a month I would take him to SeaWorld after, he was just bombarded with Disney World all month. So when we had passes, so we could go pretty much all the time. So when I would take him right towards the entrance, I remember, I'm not sure if it's like this anymore because I haven't been to SeaWorld in Orlando for years. Sort of when you walked in, and then to the left, there was a pool, and it was just a little pool. It was maybe waist high, and it was full of nothing but hundreds and hundreds of stingrays, little baby stingrays. And my son loved that little baby stingray pool. I mean, a lot of times we would go to SeaWorld, we would just hang out there for hours at the stingray pool, and he would just feed him the little sardines. They had like a little shack that you could get like a drink, or if you wanted to buy these little flats of sardines, you could buy them and feed the baby stingrays. And I can't tell you how much I've probably spent thousands and thousands of dollars on those little fish. So my son could just hang out there and feed the stingrays. And he loved that. And I didn't care because he was enjoying himself. So I would feed the stingrays with him, and he would name the stingrays. He'd see a little spot on it, or, if it had like a longer tail or a shorter tail, he would name all the different stingrays, and he would follow them around the pool. It was so cute, man. And, but my son just loved the stingrays. And in fact, from time to time, we'll even talk about, our times at SeaWorld and how we enjoyed it. I mean, I just loved it. It was so fun to take him there. It was like a way to get away from life and hang around with your son, and just, especially when they're that age. I mean, holy cow, kids are so cute. Even though I don't want any more because I'm just way too old to have kids now. So being almost 50, there's no way. Being locked down till 70. In fact, I'm not even going to live to 70 anyway, because no male's doing my family. So, but yeah, but the stingray pool was awesome. And of course, with the stingrays, there's also beside it, sort of across the walkway and behind the little shack that you bought the fish, there was a larger pool, and there were porpoise or dolphins in there, and they would, they'd be jumping around and stuff. So my son, and there were signs on there that said, do not feed the dolphins, don't feed the porpoise. So we went over there. There was nobody around, so my son kept bugging me to go over and feed him. I'm like, son, we can't go over there and feed him. I said, that sign says we can't go over there and feed him. And he says, but Dad, they look so hungry. And the only way you could see him is when they were jumping up, right? So, but we went over there, and, we were just kind of looking, even though we kind of went past the little line that you weren't supposed to go past, but we were habitual line steppers that day. And, but there was no one around, and still, I don't advocate this, but my son just kept bugging me, and, you can't, they're cute little kids, it's just hard to say no, but even if you are breaking the rules. So when we went over there, my son started chucking fish over the wall, and I'm like, son, don't do that. And all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, like Secret Service and Homeland Security, and boy, they just swarmed us. And they were like, sir, you can't be past this line. You can't be feeding these fish. And these guys had the little microphones, the little buds in their ears and stuff. And I wanted to say, see, I told you, Nicholas, but I didn't do, I didn't do that. But yeah, we got busted for feeding the porpoises one day and the dolphins. So that was kind of a scary thing. And then, the shark encounter, my son was absolutely terrified of sharks. And I think it was because we were watching Shark Week or something like that. And the sharks come up and hit the seals and, kill them and eat them. One swoop. And I told him, I said, this is what would happen to you if you were out there swimming, bud. And he just got so petrified. So he was scared of sharks. And they had, the shark encounter where it was like a glass tunnel that you could, get on the escalator and slowly go through and watch all the sharks and stuff. I love the shark encounter. And I remember when I was a kid, I was also scared of sharks also. And, so we would go, at first I didn't want to go through the shark encounter. And then when we did, I would just like hug my mom or my dad's leg, and I would just bury my face in their leg so I wouldn't have to see it. But yeah, once I got a little bit older, it was like no problem. And the sharks, and that tank was just absolutely beautiful. There's tortoise, like huge tortoise turtles swimming around, big spools of fish and stuff. And the first time that my son and I went into the shark encounter, I talked him into it. I said, but it's going to be fine. It's no problem. I was like, we're just going to go through. We'll see some great whites. We'll see some black tip sharks, some nurse sharks, some hammerheads. And my son wanted to see the hammerhead shark. So we had gone into the shark encounter, and we're going through, and there's a huge great white shark. I mean, it's going over the top, and my son is just staring at it, and he's going, whoa. And then all of a sudden, somebody threw in a big old fish to feed it. So it was feeding time for the sharks. I mean, it was just perfect timing for when we were going through the shark encounter. And all of a sudden, this great white shark just turned around and hit that fish, and my son just buried his face. And for another couple years or so, he didn't want to go into the shark encounter. And granted, he's under 10 by this point. He's just a little guy. And I mean, what luck is that? Going through, the shark encounter, and then they're just feeding the shark. I mean, unbelievable. So, yeah, I remember that happening. And then one time when he was a little bit older, I mean, it was starting to get a little, because in Florida during the summer, it rains every day, right? If you're from Florida, you know what I'm talking about. Plus the 100,000% humidity. Glad I don't have to worry about that anymore in El Paso. It could be 120 degrees here, and there's only like 10% humidity, and I love it. So, but one time we went back, and this is a couple years later when he would go back into the shark encounter. It was starting to get really dark out in the distance. So when we came out, the storm had already moved in, and this bolt of lightning hit the building right across from us, exploded. There was like sparks and stuff, and the hair was standing up on our arms and our legs. I mean, the hair was just literally standing up. I mean, parts of our hair were standing up. I mean, it was that close. I mean, we were okay, but just the static from that was like crazy. And I remember that, and my son was having fun with it. He kept like rubbing my arm, and the hairs would like stand back up after we'd put them down. It was pretty funny. And they had a couple of rides there too, right? So when I was a kid, there was, I think it was called Journey to Atlantis or something like that. And it's a water slide basically. And it goes way up top, and then it just drops like straight down, and you sit in this like little log or something like that. But there's like a minimum height requirement for that too. So you just can't throw any kid or infant on there, and then they get chucked out, when you go around a bend or something. So, because it like kind of locks you in. So my son was shorter, but my son is like huge now. He's like 6'8", 6'9". I mean, he's a big kid. I mean, his mother was tall. I'm like 6'5", so he was destined to be a Sasquatch. So we would always check to see how close he was, because that was like the only ride that they really had at SeaWorld, and was that log ride from what I remember. And it was, I think it was like Journey to the Center of Atlantis or something like that. And then it would like periodically take pictures of you. And then you could like, at the end, you could buy your pictures. And there was one of me going with my son going straight down. So I had to get that picture. In fact, when I find it, I'll try to put a picture up of it. But if I can't find it, I don't know. A lot of stuff I don't know where it is, but, so he just eventually kept getting taller and taller, and I could not wait to take him on that ride, because that was like the highlight of, him. He's like, I'm a big boy now, Dad. I'm a big boy now. I'm like, yeah, you sure are, bud. And so we eventually got to ride on Journey to Atlantis, and it was fun. And we must have rode it 10 times that day. But then a couple years later, as he got a little bit older, they were starting to build a roller coaster, and I'm not a roller coaster fan at all, because I got sick when I was a kid one time on a roller coaster. I think it was it wasn't even a roller coaster. It was at a carnival, and I think it was called the Himalaya or something like that. No, it wasn't. But it was a thing that you got in, and it was like a UFO saucer, and it would spin around. And then you would like lose gravity, and then you would slide up on the little the thing that you kind of laid back on and it would slide you up. And a Gravitron or something like that. I can't remember. I think it's the Gravitron or the Himalaya or something like that. But let me know down in the comments section. I think it's called the Gravitron because gravity and stuff, and then you lift it up. So yeah, I got sick big time. So I wasn't a fan on roller coasters anymore after that because I like chucked, and when I chucked I was inside of it and this puke just went everywhere, and you know, I hit people and everything. It was just not good. So I'm not a big roller coaster fan. So they start building this roller coaster called the Kraken at SeaWorld, and my son is just all he's ready to ride this thing. And they had a minimum requirement on that too, but it was a little bit taller, right? So every time I try to avoid it like the plague, you know what I mean? I'm trying to like take him around certain other ways. And my son's like, let's go check the roller coaster. I want to see how tall I am. And I'm going, all right, bud. Yeah, we're going to ride it as soon as you get that tall. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, Jesus, H Christ, you know, I've got to ride this thing with my son because I've told him that I'm going to ride it. So I have to like man up and ride this roller coaster with him. And I knew that day was eventually going to come when he got tall enough. And within another year, he was tall enough and I had to get on that roller coaster. And I was a big dude at the time. I was a lot heavier than what I am now. And I could barely fit in that roller coaster because you had to stand up, and there was like this thing that came up through your crotch, and there was like these things that came down over your shoulders, and I'm going, and the guy's like like jamming on it, trying to get it close. He's like breaking my ribs, but we finally got it. And it was an ordeal. And my son reached over and was shaking my belly. I was like, come on, dude, stop. Because he always did that. He would always come up to me and just like jiggle like lift up on my stomach and stuff and jiggle it. And I hated that. And he can't do that anymore. But when I lost all my weight, started losing weight, he was like, I can't move your stomach anymore. I'm like, well, that's a good thing, son. but yeah, we went on a roller coaster, and I'll tell you what, it was actually pretty fun. I mean, you went like upside down and stuff, but I was like, great, I'm going to puke all over the place. I didn't eat anything. I didn't drink anything, because I knew I was going to have to go on this monster called the Kraken. And but we went on it a couple times. And but you know, it's just so hard to say no to your kid, you know. And I'm like playing it all off like the big macho manly dad, you know, saying, oh yeah, we're gonna go on that, son. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, oh man, I don't want to do this at all. But I knew that time was gonna come. But yeah, we had a lot of fun at SeaWorld. But the most memorable moment that I had at SeaWorld with my son, I mean, it's all memorable, and I really love the Stingray pool. That was probably the funnest thing because my son just absolutely loved those Stingrays. He named them, and when we would go back, he goes, oh, there goes such and such, and there's such and such. And I was like, how do you remember this, kid? I don't even know what I ate yesterday for dinner, and you're, you know, remembering all these Stingrays and their spots and their tails. But you know, of course, you know, SeaWorld, they're Shamu, right? And I loved getting wet. And you know, you'd go and sit there'd be nobody sitting down in the splash zone. If you've ever seen the Shamu show where Shamu does tricks and splashes a crowd, I mean, just amazing what they do with Shamu. But nobody was sitting down on the splash, and I'm like, Bud, let's go get a good seat. He goes, I don't want to sit down there. I was like, why not? He goes, because you get wet when you sit down there. I was like, yeah, we'll be fine. And I'm thinking the whole time, dude, Shamu, you better splash us. And so the show was going on. It was like getting towards the end, and Shamu would get real close to the glass, and he would just spray the entire splash zone. And my son was still a little guy at this time. He's definitely less than 10. I mean, he weighed like 30 pounds soaking wet, right? I mean, he's just like this skinny little rail, made me sick. And so I was like, here he comes, buddy's coming around. And my son is like, he's like starting to get excited, and he would always do this. And all of a sudden, this massive just tidal wave of water hit us. I mean, knocked my hat off and stuff. And I looked down beside me after we just got literally drenched. I mean, my wallet was soaked, everything was soaked. And I looked down beside me to say, how'd you like that, son? And when I looked down beside me, my son was gone. And then I hear laughing, and I look, and my son's about 15 feet away. The water hit him and just washed him down the aisle. I just started laughing, and he was laughing. I was like, are you all right, bud? He goes, that was a lot of water, Dada, because he calls me Dada. And in fact, he still calls me Dada to this day, and he's, in his middle 20s now. And yeah, he was but that was like the funniest thing that ever happened, was when he was just literally washed away, probably 15 feet, 20 feet away from me. And he was just absolutely soaked also. And we were just we were laughing about it and stuff. But we still kind of talk about, SeaWorld from time to time. So I wouldn't mind actually going back on vacation to maybe Florida one more time and taking my son to SeaWorld. That would be cool. That would be like a really nice thing to do, I think. So maybe I'll do that next time I go down there. So, but there you go, everybody. That is my adventures at SeaWorld with my son. So a lot of good times, a lot of great memories there. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I took him to SeaWorld. I can't tell you how much money I spent on those darn sardines for the Stingrays. I mean, that was but it was so worth it though, because my son just had a ball. I remember going and buying $20 worth at a time, because they were like because they give you the paper boats, and they were like 3 for $5. And I was like, I'll take $20 for the fish. And the people knew who we were too. They're like, oh, you're back again. I was like, yeah, we're back again. Here's all my money. So there you go, everybody. That's my adventures at SeaWorld. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think down in the comments section. If you liked the video, do me a huge favor, give me a thumbs up, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also have a great one. So, it's fun doing these real life stories, and I hope you're enjoying them, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.